Magic with 3 fingers. Okay. I did something. I don't know what. So, so today, I would like to talk about how to process a pig. But first of all, this is not a vegetarian presentation. So I will really talk about how to process a pig. So there will be blood and some disgusting images. So if you feel that you can't keep up with the images and the rest of the presentation, it's okay to leave the room. Yeah, and leave the zombies outside. So let's warm up a bit. So you obviously know how pig killing or pig slaughtering happens in a family. Have you ever been in such an event? Can you raise your hand? Okay, basically, it's down. But first of all, I would like to ask you some questions because I'm curious. That do you know what part of a pig is used to create a spaghetti, the meat? Do you know what part of the pig is used?
Shoulder.
No, not the shoulder. It's the leg. So the leg is minced, and that's used in a typical spaghetti. But you can do obviously from the shoulder. It doesn't matter, but in general. And Wiener Schnitzel. Do you know what part of the pig is used for that?
It's that pig, right?
It's a chicken, the chicken pig used for that. It's a pork chop. And do you know what part of the pig is the pork chop? What's your opinion? It's the leg, the head. Who thinks that it's a head? Nobody thinks that. What about the belly? No. What about the leg? Why? No. It's the back. It's the back of the pig. And the famous question, paprika. You know? What kind of ingredients you use to create a paprika? Nobody knows that. Let's move on. So the first thing with this pig slaughtering event is, having pigs. So let's start in the morning. So the first thing is to pull out the pig.
No, that's not the first.
Yeah. You know that. The first real thing. The pig slaughtering is pulling out the pig. And it requires a lot of people, as you can see in the image. It's one way of getting the pig out of the house. And obviously you will kill the pig. It's a bloody event. And you have to collect all the blood, or most of the blood, because it is used later on when you are processing all the meat. But I don't want to show you that image. But the next thing is, with the dead body, is roasting. Because you want to remove all the hair from the body. And after the roasting, you can do it once, but most probably not, because you need to do it at least twice for the pig. So it's very laborious work, and after that you have to wash the pig. And the next thing I want to show you is removing the head of the pig. But what I will show you is that what happens after you remove the head, because you have to elevate the body, and think about it, it's around 120 kilograms of raw meat, dead meat, and you have to elevate that thing. It requires some strength, but sometimes it's not so easy because it can fall down. So it's a heavy work. At the very beginning, that's why you are drinking a lot of paprika, because this whole process requires a lot of strength and determination. And right after that, you have to cut the pig into 2 halves and try to remove all the body parts. So this is the next thing I want to show you, because it's kind of boring. And we move every meat we cut out from the body to some place where it's not so cold, so we can work there and drink more palinka, or a bit less because it's not so cold. So you have to remove all the skin, chop the meat into smaller parts. You can start mincing some more meat and cut the sausage meat into small parts. But usually what you don't know, or you might know because almost all of you have attended to this event, this kind of event, is what's the first thing you can eat from a pig at the very day you killed the pig? The blood. No, not exactly. The ears. So the roasted ear, that's the first thing you can eat. And immediately,
you eat them.
the skin.
It's in my preference.
Yeah.
You can eat the skin raw.
Skin roll.
You can eat the skin.
Yeah, but you have to remove the skin. But it's the ear, so it's immediately accessible to eat the ear. The next thing is you have all the body parts into small pieces. So the next step is putting things together. That's the most boring part of the whole thing, because you start with cooking the meat, and it's like a huge broth, because you put almost all the ingredients into a huge bowl, and you boil it. And after removing all the meat, the cooked meat, you put the rice into the same broth, the remaining water, and you put more spices into it, and basically create the kasha. This is the Hungarian name for that. You will use that for mixing the cooked meat together, but you have to mince this cooked meat. And at the end, you mix everything, more spices, and the meat, and the rice, and you fill the bowl. So that's the liver verse. This is the best translation I found for urka, which is I don't know in English, of course. And the sausage. So usually you start with the small meat pieces. You put all the spices on top of the meat, and you start mixing the meat. And that's a very clever device. I haven't used that, but it basically puts the minced meat right into the bowl, so it's kind of easy. But if you don't have the device, just call up some celebrities and they will do the work. Or call some presidents up and they can do the work as well. And at the end, you will get the sausage. And you put it into these wooden rods, and in the upcoming days, you smoke it to preserve the sausages. Okay, and one more thing. It won't be bloody, I promise. Greaves. You usually get these things from the breakfast in Alpacuca, but it starts with a huge amount of fat. And you have put into a huge bowl, and it takes a lot of time and attention just to get all fat out of those pieces. And at the end, it's quite delicious. You can eat it. And my question is that this is just a small glimpse of what we do regularly in this event, or during this event. And what do you think about what are the leftovers of a pig that we can't use? I mean, if it's a traditional pig slaughter event in a family house, in a farmland, can you imagine something that we don't use from
The dreams of the pig.
Yeah.
And the bowel content.
Okay, that's not part of the pig, the feet. The feet. Yeah, the nails, exactly the nails, because those are falling off after the roasting of the pig, so you can easily pull the nails out. And obviously you don't want to chew a nail to the pig, because, yeah. There might be some nations that use it, but that's the only thing you throw away from a pig. And, okay, this is still disgusting, no? Still, or not? It depends. But my message here is not just, okay, I can tell you how to process a pig, but it's more about the differences between a family event of killing a pig and process all the meat and create food, comparing to other things. So think about this. So there's a family guy, a farmer, who has access to a large family or country house, and they might have access to grains and also the pigs. So it takes a couple of months, at least 4 or even more, 6 or more months, to raise a pig to a certain size when you decide, okay, it's ready to slaughter that poor animal. But can you imagine that during this period, this farmer guy could develop emotional bond to that animal, because he can see that the small pig grows and grows and grows while that guy feeds that animal constantly. So at the end, it's just kind of circle of life, and there is an emotional attachment, but still, those people in the past needed this procedure to keep the family alive. So that's why it's totally different comparing to this industrial meat producing facilities, when you can see a lot of animals without any emotional bond, obviously, and producing huge amount of meat every day with a huge amount of resources. And can you imagine when you throw out a Wiener Schnitzel or something because you can't eat it? It's because we have these industrial farms and not these pigs we loved before we killed them. So, and also you know what you will eat when you eat those pigs, instead of just buying some raw meat from the shop. Thank you for your attention. Questions?
Talk into the mic.
During these family events, like everything's put in the sausage, the belly isn't separated out to be eaten just like belly?
The belly is interesting. I didn't put into the presentation because this is what we call the pig cheese. I didn't find a proper translation because it contains a lot of more things like the ear of the pig and other fatty body parts sliced into small pieces and put together, and it creates a jelly-like something, and everything was put into the belly of the pig. So yeah, this is kind of disgusting, but if you eat it, it's fine. It contains a lot of protein. Another question there was. Yes.
What do you do with the head?
With the head. So have you ever seen cochonja?
Yes.
Yeah. So some parts of the head goes into cochonja, like the nose. Some, and also there is a delicious bacon created from the what is this? Yeah, yeah.
The double chip.
The double chin. Yeah, the double chin. Delicious bacon.
The eyes.
The eyes. I can show you an image for that.
Let's just describe it.
I remove the eye, obviously.
But they don't process it
Not every place, but it can be processed.
in more ways.
We didn't process the eyes, so we removed it.
And someone does how? What?
I don't know. The only thing I'm quite sure about that.
You have the ovary, and in the ovary you put, for example, the eye.
Yeah.
And then you use the ovary to create the
Yeah.
So apparently on the countryside we have some Finnish traditions where we come from. So fish, yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Thank you.
And now we are jumping from one fun to the other. Luis is going to talk about poker, is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yay!
Cool. So before starting to introduce my topic, I have a couple of questions for you guys. So who has ever played poker here? Please raise your hand. Like almost everyone. Okay. And who has ever played poker online? Good, that's cool. And lastly, what is the first word that comes to mind when you hear poker? Throw me some words. All in. Cheating. Flop. Poker face. Sunglass. Cool. The reason I asked is because when I ask myself this question, it's very hard to come up with one word, but it's kind of a combination of those words. And I don't know if you can read that, but it's a lot of things like passion, focus, effort, perseverance, patience. And today I'm not here to talk about the game of poker, but how this happened to me and how developing a passion for something has changed my life. So notice that I said developing a passion. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of us, you ask yourself, what is my passion or how do I find my passion? And asking this kind of gives the assumption that our passion has been lost somewhere or that it's hidden somewhere. And that's not true. Passion is not something you're born with, it's something you create. It's something you develop, you have to build, brick by brick. And that starts with following an interest, following something you're curious about, something you really want to learn more about. So let me share a bit of my journey with you today on that. So for me, poker started, I learned poker when I was 16, but I really started playing when I was in university. I loved playing online. I loved playing with some friends. I loved watching people playing on videos. And, you know, I only played with play money, which is basically fake money. There's no monetary value or anything. And I was playing every day until I graduated and I started traveling. So from the year 2012 until 2014, I lived in 6 different cities, 4 different countries, and I basically didn't play poker again. And in 2015, I was living in Hungary already, and in my football team, there were 2 professional poker players. And just by talking to them, it got me inspired again. And I remember like just thinking this, it was so crazy for me that I liked the poker so much, and how come I never played again or I stopped playing? So it was kind of a realization, and I started playing again. So I reactivated my online account. I started playing again with fake money, and I read the book. And then for the first time in the beginning of 2016, I put some real money and started playing with online. And that's why I mentioned this, because poker never meant anything related to money to me. It was really about the logic, the math, the psychology. All of this always fascinated me. And since that day in 2016, I played almost every day, and it's been a total, I saw it yesterday, almost 1.5 or 1.7 million hands. So for you to have an idea of how many hands that is, if I were to play in a casino, if I would play in a casino 2 hours every day, every single day for the rest of my life, it would take me 115 years to play that amount of hands. And that's why I love playing poker online, because it's very fast. There's a lot of action. You learn faster, you fail faster. There's a lot of dynamics, and I also like playing live, but that's the reason I really like online. So all of this is cool, but there's one thing that I didn't mention. Poker is a tough game, and you get punched in the face a lot. And throughout those 2 years, I had to go through some tough moments, and there's a big variance in the game. Even if you're the best player in the world, you're gonna lose. Some days are not gonna be your days, some weeks are not gonna be your weeks, and some months are not gonna be your months. So I understood that to get better at this skill, I not only had to learn about the game, but I had to get better in other parts of my life. And the mental state, my physical state when playing has a direct impact on my performance. So if I would be tired, or if I'm hungover or if I'm, not in a very good state, it has a big impact. So I started studying, alongside of studying poker, I studied success in successful people. And, I read and saw a lot of videos about, different artists or actors or athletes, entrepreneurs, and I noticed that everyone was kind of saying the same things. So I decided, yeah, let's try to experiment with some things. And the first thing that I started doing was I started waking up earlier. And until a certain point, until that year, 2016, I always woke up like 40 minutes before I had to leave or something like this, either to go to school or to work. And, after 2 years right now, I wake up 3 hours before I was waking up in 2016, and even on the weekends. So that was, a big change for me, and implementing a morning routine was something that definitely changed me. In the end of 2016, another thing happened to me. I quit smoking, and that habit, or breaking a habit, was something that, kind of started a chain of positive reactions and new habits creating. So in 2017, for example, I started exercising, meditating, reviewing books, doing the night journal, as the guy said. And of course, none of this happened from one day to the other, from one week to the other. But I don't know, the feeling that it gave me, everything started to, my life got better, my relationship got better. I started to understand a bit more about my values, what I care about, what I think about everything. And that's why I'll forever be grateful to poker for that, because it not only taught me and helped me with my habits, but it also gave me some very good lessons about life in general. And it taught me from things like understanding the long term, understanding the variance, putting myself into the other's shoes, and in poker I have to do it a lot. I'm like, what do they think that they think I have, or things like that. So really trying to put yourself into the other's shoes, or many things, how to deal with losses and how to fail and recover, all of this. But the main lesson for me, and if you guys could remember one thing from today, it would be the power that consistency and discipline brings. And it might be something that we hear a lot sometimes in some motivational videos or speeches and things, but at least for me it was not really clear what that feeling is. And today I still feel like I'm in the beginning of my journey, but I can truly say that this feeling, when you feel proud of yourself, when you feel proud of what you're becoming, it's a crazy thing, and I wish more people could experience this. And to end, I'd like to show you guys a quick video from a guy named Don Liu about passion.
Passion isn't something hidden inside of you that's going to reveal itself magically over a cup of coffee. It is not going to come knocking at your door. It's something you need to go out and build. And the people that have the discipline to do that, the ones that are willing to put in the hard work of building their life's meaning from the ground up, those are the ones with enough grit to really make it. Those are the ones that don't stop at just building a passion. Those are the ones that don't stop until they change the world with it.
So maybe I'm not changing the world yet, but if any part of this story was able to inspire you somehow, my invitation for you is think about, everything that you have in your bucket list or that you've wanted to do for some time. Maybe it's learning an instrument or going for dance classes or cooking classes or traveling to that country. We all know that we have something that we never really had the time to do it, but my invitation for you is go for it. Maybe following this interest and developing a passion might also change your life. Thank you. Question?
I have a question. So you said that sometimes you have losing streaks, right?
Yes.
The run where you also
Yes.
remember if you had
Yes.
that. Does that affect like other aspects of your life? Because I'm guessing if you're on a winning streak, really good, then you'll be much more joyful. However, if you're having a losing streak, does that also negatively affect how your relationship goes?
Yes, and it was also a big lesson because in the beginning for me, it's very hard to control that. And another big lesson was definitely controlling my emotions. And it happens a lot that people go crazy, and especially in a game like poker, a lot of people go and have fights or get drunk or do things. In the beginning, it was hard for me. It would affect sometimes my, someone that is around me. I was just complain about things. But I feel like today I do a much better job on that, and even controlling myself and just having a laugh about that and knowing that the long term is what is important. And if I focus on what I can control, then it's fine. Then it's going to be fine.
There was one part in your presentation that really stuck with me, that you said that with consistency and discipline, almost anything is achievable. My question is, how do you make yourself consistent and how do you discipline yourself basically? What are the mind
So I created a lot of rituals and I experimented a lot with things that would work for me. So just to share an example, I think no one likes to wake up with an alarm clock and you wake up, you feel shitty and you don't really want to get out of bed. And I had this problem as well. And I experimented with different apps. I experimented with different things, different times, different songs, different stuff. And some things kind of worked, some things didn't. But what eventually, after experimenting with a lot of things, what worked for me was to have a second alarm clock in the living room with a big sound. The volume would be much higher in a way that if I don't turn it off, my alarm in the room would go on, would start, and then 1 minute later, that alarm in the living room would start. So I had to go there and turn it off. Otherwise, it would definitely wake up my girlfriend. Or if I stay in bed, I would wake up and I leave it close to a glass so that I can take a cup of water. I put a big motivational quote on the so I designed it in a way that today works for me. So creating those rituals, I feel like is what, or basically finding what works for you.
So you're saying basically experimenting and not giving up until you find something that
Exactly.
works better or the best for you.
Yeah, and sometimes watching a lot of things and seeing a lot of things from successful people really helps me to just do the things you don't want to, whenever I feel like I don't really want to do this, I want to do it just because of, I know that later on I'll have this feeling that I'm proud of making that decision back then in the day when I didn't want to.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for the clicker. So our next presenter, I'm really happy that she's here because she's the only presenter from the San Francisco office today. So please welcome warmly Belinda.
So this is me. I was sitting in a river on a Tuesday afternoon, having a massive meltdown. And the reason this happened is because my friend Stacy decided one day that she wanted to become a river guide. And so she said, hey, Dee, let's become a river guide. And I was like, sure, how hard could it be? And what follows is a story about how belief, self-belief, and perseverance in doing the things that you need to do to achieve your goal really means that when you achieve that goal, it means so much more to you. And so really, this is the story about becoming a rough guide. Now, with any good story, the heroine always has obstacles. And I was absolutely no different. One of the things that I did discover is that I do not like cold water. Bit of a problem because the American River, which is where I learned to guide, the water is snowmelt from Lake Tahoe. The water is cold, and I don't like cold water. The second thing about water is that it's wet, and if there are rocks, they're wet rocks and they're slippery. And so what happened was a lot of the people who are learning to become river guides are 18-year-olds on college break. And so what would happen is that as you approach the rapid, you would eddy out, and the instructor would say, hey, let's go over here and talk about the rapid. And the 18-year-olds would be like this, and run to the rapid. But I'm a dancer, and if I twist my knee or break an ankle, that would make me very unhappy. So I would go over the rocks like this, you know? And so the reason I was in the river crying on that Tuesday afternoon was because I had slipped and hit my butt really hard, and I was having a massive meltdown. And I was ready to go home. But see, Stacy had driven to the river, and Stacy was having a very good time. So we weren't going anywhere. So there I was. And then with anything, when you're learning to become a raft guide, you have to be able to swim, is my idea of swimming. But see, this kind of swimming is extraordinarily different from that kind of swimming. So, and the thing you need to remember is that when you swim across the rapid, and you get to the other side and you're really, really happy because you finally did it, to get back to your tent, you gotta go swim back across the rapid, which again, takes a lot of effort. And the final thing is that we had to learn that we had to camp because, you know, we're on the river. And my idea of camping is a suite at the Ritz-Carlton with room service. So this camping thing on the dirty ground, no toilets, had to learn how to do this. And so after a week of this, I worked so hard. I did everything I could. And after a week, the instructor said to me, you know what? We see that you work so hard. Oh my gosh, you work the hardest of everyone, and you got the, you know, in terms of improvement, you were the most improved. We don't think you're good enough. Become a professional rock guide. So at that point, anyone who knows me, I was like, and said, you know what? I am going to become a raft guide. But the thing about it is that the thing that you have to remember is that if they had said to me, we think you're good enough to become a raft guide, will you come guide with us? Yeah, no. But it was fun, I'm done. But for me, no, so because they said no, I decided I was going to become a raft guide. And so what this meant was the quote. What this meant was working in the kitchen at 7 a.m. to feed 300 to 500 guests breakfast on Saturday and Sunday mornings. This meant working to get the rafts ready for our trips down the river during the day. This also meant guiding our customers down the river, feeding them lunch, and when all of that was done, feeding them dinner at the end of the day. And so, because I was a trainee, I was not getting paid for any of this, I also had a job Monday through Friday where I was actually working full time. And then on Friday night at 8:30, because San Francisco Bay Area traffic, I would drive up to the river 3.5 hours away, arrive when it was dark out, and then do this 7 o'clock in the morning start, work all day until about 10 o'clock at night, and then on Sunday I would work on the river again, and I would drive home 3.5 hours. So that was my entire summer. The thing about it is, if you work hard enough, you can achieve your goal. And in September, the last month of the rafting season, they made me a professional raft guide. Now, so the American River is the second most commercially guided river in the United States, which means that there's a lot of opportunity for, making money on the river. And one of those things are photographers on the river, which goes to show you, that's me on the river, which goes to show you that if you do believe in yourself and you do work to get what you want, that you will get that sense of accomplishment. And because I work so hard on the river, this means more to me than anything that I have done that came more easily to me. And I'm going to finish with a story. My friend Stacy, who dragged me to the river to begin with, she became a professional raft guide full time. And she rafted all over the world. And every summer, she would come back to the American River to guide. And she also became an instructor for the other guides. And I actually didn't find this out until many years later. Inevitably, somebody would be having problems on the river for whatever reason. And she or one of the instructors would pull this person aside and say, you know what? I've got a story for you. Let me tell you this story. Thank you.
But what is the job?
What's a raft guide do? So I'm the person in the back of the boat there, and I yell at my customers to work.
Modern slavery.
Yes, they pay for the slavery. So basically, you're in a big boat, and the boat has to go a certain path down the river because you want to avoid the rocks and the shopping carts and everything in the river. And so the people are my machine essentially. So it's paddle forward, paddle backward, and then you can also turn the raft.
So you also know the river itself, you have to know how
Yes.
the river is laid out so that they don't know it's dangerous.
Yes. So if you screw up, the boats will flip. And then you'll get caught on rocks. All of this has happened.
Like I said,
Yeah, that is actually one of my favorite pictures.
What was the most challenging experience you had during this river riding?
So there are a couple, but I think it was this one. Yeah. So you see the old gentleman back over there?
Yeah.
So what happens is that we get on the river and we raft for about 2 hours in really easy water, and then we have a lunch break, and then after lunch we hit the class 3 rapids. And this gentleman's daughter came up to me during lunch and said, my dad had open heart surgery like 6 months ago. I just want to let you know this. So I freaked out a little bit. I talked to the head lead person, and so we agreed that everyone would keep a close eye on my raft. The second story I have is about a guy who worked in a hospital, And so and he wasn't a doctor, so I said, oh, are you a nurse? Because that's like the most obvious next thing for me. And he got very insulted. And so what we do is that we put on people's life jackets, so those orange things. And we're supposed to cinch it up really tight, because what happens when it gets wet is it gets loose. So if it's really tight to begin with, then it won't, do one of these things and get up onto your head. And so this guy jumps out into the water and we invite him to. And he, we're floating down the river and I'm calling for him to come to school. I'm like, get back over here. I made my entire crew paddle upstream to fetch him because his life jacket was like up here and he couldn't swim. So yeah, well, we had challenging people.
What did he do at the hospital?
Yeah, that's.
Oh gosh, I don't remember. He was just very, I remember that he was so mad at me, so pissed off at me because I had suggested he might be a nurse.
Thank you.
So the next presentation is going to be one of a kind. You know what? You can come and just introduce yourselves.
All right. Hello.
I want the mic as well.
Okay. So I'm gonna be your host tonight. And he gonna be my background pretty lady on the Big Prezi Quiz 2018. And we start immediately.
Everyone, take your phone.
Yeah, so this is gonna be an online game, an online quiz with a nice background music. So please use your devices, browsers, mobiles, whatnot, and join.
Yeah. So you have to go to cognitive.item. Naughty nicknames beware.
Nice. So this is gonna be a quiz where we have a bunch of questions, and you see 4 answers, and you choose you pick one, and the winner gonna have a prize, a secret prize, in the brown bag, in the black bag. It's
How many names do we need to see?
17. Are you in, guys? When can we start?
1 second.
Are you good?
1 second.
Okay. Take your time. 23 so far.
Wow.
Come on, guys, we have a prize. Can we start? Are you good? All right, let's start. Please. We start the quiz immediately. So you're gonna have 25 questions. The first one.
Who used first name databases to see how male-female ratio presents a trend over time? I won't read out the answers, sorry. Because I might give you a hint, which I don't want to. Ha ha ha.
So if you have the right answer and you are quick, you get more points. Yeah, you have to be fast because
and correct.
Correct.
Say yes. Great, false advertising.
Also, if you have right answers in a row, that's extra points. Please proceed.
Okay, next question.
Who's the first?
Jopi
was great.
Let's see. So, how many LPs does she have?
Don't cheat.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, next one. Who is Steven? How many employees Prezi had so far?
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you can come closer if it helps.
Nice.
Okay, we play the game.
Oh.
But so let's see. Decades ago, Danny Shardy was working with both. What does it stand?
No, don't cheat.
Yeah, the pictures were chosen deliberately.
Who's that answer?
Okay. The best pictures are, like, coming back. Okay, next one.
Who choose oil?
In which year did Morton and they first attend the World Rubik's Cube Championship?
First time.
And this is him on the picture. Blindfolded, of course. Because that's how you saw it. Rubik's Cube. Play the game. When was Mercury Paris built? Let's see who was paying attention. Nice!
You actually pay attention.
Yeah, it's good. Whoa! It's almost 1 point. Okay, nice. Happy days.
Who's happy day, by the way?
Oh, okay, let's see. What was the zebra? Wow.
Come on, guys.
Please explain. What was zebra?
Zebra was the transformation tool in the core editor. The zebra. Actually, the Prezi logo is the zebra. Yeah. This one.
Okay, still the game. How many official office locations did Prezi have so far globally? So altogether.
We don't even know the answer.
But 90% is that.
Yeah, it's definitely more than 6.
Yeah, it's more than 6. You can put at least 7.
Claims.
Let's see. What is HP's favorite food? That's an easy one, sorry. But the picture is working. Yes. All right. And this is the most popular password that is the pressing too. Okay. Maybe it's good, yeah. So what time was this email sent to party DB? Because the home store was short night is still long.
5 BW.
Night was still long at that time. Okay. Okay, next one. When was the first kill suicide project announced? These are the commits in the suicide repository. Not that helps.
Frequency.
Yeah, the frequency. Someone doesn't know the answer. Okay.
Not bad, not bad.
I lost my feet.
Sorry. Happy day. Ooh. On the last fundraising bike ride, how many hours it took to ride 500 kilometers per hour?
Two came 61.
Okay. Are you using one phone? So how was the president called?
You can.
They also have that.
Yes. Good. So, happy day. It's a happy day. So the next one. What is the address of the biggest Brazilian mailing list? More than 300 members. I would say it's an easy one, but not for everyone. Yeah. For sure. Yes.
No more get the typing.
Okay. Let's see. What smart hacker stored on Prezi storage for easy. Yeah, easy one.
Yes. Let's see.
This is a smart hacker on the picture. Yeah, I mean, good. Or at least this is what we are, what we know. Whoa, nice. Spencer expected an answer straight of 3. Okay.
It's good.
Let's see. What is silver spelling? He is silver spelling. He left press.
Actually, it's showing.
Is it not twice? Don't have.
Oh my God.
The answer wasn't.
You did not prepare this.
Okay, good. 5 players just did answer straight. So what is special? You can see.
What is special?
What is good?
He is special. He also left Brazil.
What do we know?
Yeah, it's an upper one. Oh, Tony. Follow me?
Tony?
Okay.
Okay.
Nice. What is Turkey? He is Turk.
This is a picture of Turk.
He also left the company.
I can't believe this picture.
This is a leading picture. I have to. I hope he doesn't mind.
Correct answer.
Nice. So when was the last party in Old Bistro when Brazilians danced on the table? This picture was not taken. It's just an illustration.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember it.
Wow.
Because it was only you.
Yes. You made that thing.
This was you, Steve.
I have no comments. So that is still meaning which term is not present in the present context.
That's a
Tough one.
Can I get a prize for last place?
Oh wow! I guess some mistakes are over. Sorry. About how much orange we press the squeeze so far.
That's great.
Nice. Okay.
Good.
Good guesses. How many times did Mowgli steal President's breakfast? He is Mowgli.
Of course.
Ooh. What is not true about Fozari? An expert. That's a tough one, yes.
Yeah, actually,
All of them are very probable, right? But he is, maybe.
yeah, actually, that was fast.
Nice. So let's see. Autumn is still the leader. Which movie was downloaded via torrent in the US office, which almost caused a lawsuit?
Actually, it's not.
Ah, that's an easy one.
We shouldn't talk about
It never happened. It's the theoretical question. Yes, it was
But it was Zoolander.
in a theoretical question.
Oh my god.
My problem.
Okay, and I think the last question. When was the Prezi Harlem Shake?
And video.
And there's a video.
Really?
Really?
Everything was in 2013. We had no chance to guess it.
That was the great year.
It's a good video, so you will watch it. And you have in your faces.
Yeah, Donnie, you
But
were
wait
there.
for it.
You were there, Donnie. And the prize is, and the winner is.
Maybe there's one more.
No, the winner is.
Donnie! Congrats! Congratulations. Yes.
Congratulations.
Please look at it and tell
Show
what
it to
you
the
see.
people.
HP is very good.
Prezi pie. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. That was us.
Any questions? I have some questions, but they are going to remain unsaid. Okay, so now we are going to transfer to Slido, but until we can actually make our decisions on who to vote, I am going to go back to the morning and then go through each of the presentations just to give you a quick reminder. So the first one.
Password security. Nice.
What's up? We share this with everyone.
Oh,
It's a public.
it's that.
It's restricted.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't pay attention. We are all right? Can I go? Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. I was so busy, like, okay, who is who? I lost it. All right, so the first one was Choppy, and Alex, the best pointer in the world. So they did a hashtag presentation. The second one was Benson, and we got to know a lot about our Prezi building. The next one was Christo about lucid dreaming, which actually, as I heard, made us talk a lot. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't present. Oh, that's why you said that each time I stand there, it's only this part is that can be seen. Okay, so the next one was Danielle, who talked about his hedgehog, who is a she.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon, excuse me, Cinnamon. She has a name. I mean, let's respect that hedgehog. Kinga talked about the power of thank you and the magic of thank you. Flame talked about the alchemy and the design and combination. Ignat talked about zombies and didn't show us his links, but you can look it up. Marcelo talked about big boring presentations and how it's achievable. Balint talked about density and actually cities. Donnie talked about, how do you pronounce that? Kala. And we ate together. It is gone.
It says there's no app.
Yeah, the board just.
Amazing.
Oh, it came back.
Wonderful, how is that?
Maybe it is.
We should talk about sausage and grease. Louise talked about Volker and how he changed his life. Balenti talked about how she became a rafting instructor.
Victor's not on it.
Victor's not on it, even though he made us think about the most important political issues of today's societies, which is fight over rice. Can we add Victor as an option?
What? Sorry about that.
It's okay.
What?
Victor is missing. Is he there?
You're right.
Victor is missing.
Right.
Okay?
Sorry.
So we are working so hard that nobody hears anybody. It's very discussional. Okay. Be ready together. Victor, Nigeria. Okay. Is that all right? Is that okay? Thank you. Okay. So these are the presentations you can vote for. Because, so we don't have Joe, because that was too, they gave away presents and they are not on the list anymore.
Kahoot. Kahoot. They're Kahoot. Kahoot with Joe.
Where is that? Can we do that? Oh, that's good.
Oh.
Excuse me. Okay, so make sure you choose your favorite presentation. And I would highly recommend to also think about the presentation skills and the effort that they put in it. Just it shows.
So let's count quickly.
We have 26 with the
26?
with the
25.
Can I get the computer?
Can I share the link on Facebook?
If we have
Without
30,
friends.
if we have 30, that's
That's right, so.
Oh, it's not allowed to share on my own Instagram page?
Zombies everywhere.
Anybody who wants to still vote,
I'm
then we can
voting.
close it. Let's
Just
stop
a
it.
second.
And then I think
Just a second, excuse me.
so we will see the deciding factor.
Yes, I know. Okay,
Cookies.
ready. And send. Amazing.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have everyone. So now I can go up and be like, whoa.
Ooh.
So this year, no, this is a happy whoa. It was a really happy whoa. Come on. Okay.
It was close.
It was really happy, you guys. So, Luis, congratulations. Okay, so as typical, we are going to say some technical information now. Coming up about like today evening and tomorrow morning. So there is going to be the all hands presentations at 5. We will need a little later.
They are on the way.
They are a little late, so we don't know when exactly it's going to start. Please don't go far. I mean, it's Ratanas, you can't. Please don't make us fetch you a mic or something, okay? Just stay around. No, not yet. Please, go back. I still have stuff to say. I even said, like, I'm going to talk about today and tomorrow. What else can I say to make you stay? Okay. We are going to take a group picture as well. I mean, David, if you want, you can. Okay. And important stuff. Tonight, after the all hands presentations, we are going to have the dinner together. And after dinner, I would like to ask you a question. There is a possibility to actually watch a movie. Meanwhile, we are in the water, in a pool. That is one option. Or is there anyone who is interested in that at all? Okay, then we are not going to do that. I mean, you guys are amazing. You just have saved us another round of organization. So thank you. I appreciate it. That's okay. And then we are going to be up in the hotel building. This is where we are going to have a little party. And please, if you want to come, do come. Okay? One question.
What movie?
The movie is up to you. Not Splendor.
Let me download it.
This is about zombies. You guys want zombies? Really? Okay. So you said no already to that. Listen to me. Just one more thing. There's just one more thing I really have to say. Tomorrow morning, the bus is going to be leaving at 10. So you don't have to rush with your breakfast. Get up, get food, because the bus is going to take you back to Brazil at 10 o'clock. 10. 9 plus 1, 11 minus 1. Got it? Wonderful. Okay, so we don't know when exactly we are starting, so please be around. No?
Well, updates that the all hands presentation, kids were in a very big traffic jam, so they decided to go back to the office and present from there.
No.
And they are not going to show up here. But some of them who are coming by car, like Bob and Andy and Andy and some guys, they're going to show up. So I don't know. We'll see. So it officially starts at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And just be around. So we'll see how it works out. Yes, sure. I love that. Can you join for a group picture in your new hat, maybe?
Magari para a câmera à frente.